Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Tonight, a Windsor renter annoyed with her property manager. She says they've taken months to address her security concerns. Plus, a bakery makes the decision to shut down. The owner blames inflating costs, and we're hearing more businesses are on the brink. It will cost millions to restore an old vacant high school. A look at the decision facing the new Essex Council. And an audit of Canada's pandemic response highlights swift action and warns of significant waste. A frustrated Windsor tenant has spent months trying to get her yard and belongings back. She's now speaking out about her struggle to get answers. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
This is where they had to take the fence off.
Jessica Butler's garage used to be here, but her landlords demolished it and said it would be replaced with a tiny home. That was about 6 months ago. Since then, nothing has been built, leaving Butler with a gaping hole in her backyard fence.
Oh, it's incredibly irritating. I mean, everybody can see into our backyard.
Her space has now become a free-for-all. She says people have stolen from her yard and dumped garbage there. She's tried to put in a small makeshift fence, but that hasn't helped.
I mean, my kids no longer have a safe place to play, essentially, because there's an exposed wire, and I don't want, my kids tripping over it. There's a bunch of rocks there that never used to be there.
Butler also says her belongings from the garage were put into a storage unit. She says it was under the demolition company's name, but for months the unit has gone unpaid, keeping her from getting her things. Marta Management is the property manager. Butler says she's gone back and forth with them for months through emails and phone calls, but nothing's been resolved. It wasn't until after CBC got involved that Marta said it would look at paying that storage unit invoice and look at putting in temporary fencing.
It is really tough when we're a little bit of the middleman. Essentially, we will advocate on behalf of the tenant or the owner based on the circumstance. What I can assure you is that this owner will do what he has to do, and we will do what is required to come to terms with this tenant and ensure that she has what she needs.
Marta says it's difficult because this project wasn't their doing, and so their hands are tied. But a lawyer says Marta is responsible in this situation.
Under the Residential Tenancies Act, the rights and responsibilities of a landlord extend to their agents. A landlord doesn't deal with the day-to-day pieces. They hire someone on their behalf to do that work. So they shouldn't be, the property management company shouldn't be punting the decisions or the responsibility to the landlord. They are the landlord's agent.
Despite the promises Marta has told CBC News about, Butler says she's yet to hear this from the company. For now, she just wants her belongings back and her yard to be safe again. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Renters like Butler can take issues to the landlord and tenant board, but that process can take a long time. Last month, the spokesperson told us it takes up to 8 months for a case to be heard by the board. People can submit an application to shorten that wait if they feel their case is a priority. And all this depends on the type of application that is being submitted. 2 weeks ago, the province said it hired 35 more staff, and that was done with an aim to help schedule hearings and issue decisions faster. A local bakery owner is hanging up her apron. She says after years of the pandemic layered on with inflation and other problems, she's making the painful decision to close up shop by the end of the month. Gabby Jadlinski has been a business owner for 5 years, nurturing this bakery on Erie Street and connecting with her clients.
When you recognize those faces, they become familiar and you know their kids and you see them growing up and you got to be a part of their lives, and it's always been so rewarding in that sense, and I think that's what makes it the hardest.
The shop survived the first couple of years of the pandemic, but people stopped going out the way they used to. This boarded up window, a fresh reminder of another hit last week. Her store was robbed, someone taking the register.
You just kind of feel like you keep getting kicked when you're down, and it's just, there's not enough money coming in. It's just, you feel like you're kind of bleeding yourself dry.
She says she's not alone. The Chamber of Commerce also sees signs of struggle.
When it comes to businesses which are like the bakery that you mentioned, their input costs are so significantly high that I fear that there are many more that are on the verge of closing down.
Take a look at some of these numbers from the chamber based on feedback from local businesses. Since June of last year, butter is up 25%, eggs 50%, flour up 59%, canola oil up 135%.
A lot of businesses struggling to just stay afloat just because there is no way they can absorb that kind of increase in input costs.
We couldn't get cream cheese, and then when you can get ingredients, it's all of a sudden like 40 to 60% markup for all of your items, and it's just, you feel like it's taking more and more out of you, and if you try to increase your prices, then customers get upset.
Jedlinski sees her colleagues working overtime to get by, says they're burnt out.
How is that sustainable? Like, I think they're doing such an incredible job, but I want more for them. I want more like results for that amount of hard work and love that they put into the city.
She says more needs to be done to support small businesses, like consumers ditching online shopping to go into local stores. Jedlinski also says the Chamber of Commerce should be doing more.
I wish there was more work between small businesses and them currently. It's been a little bit isolating.
The Chamber says it is working to find relief for businesses, highlighting programs and grants already available, but more needs to be done.
We have a list of things that we'll be proposing, and we have proposed so that there can be some respite from this significant increase.
Like proposing to municipalities that they drop business permit fees, asking them to consider lowering property taxes for certain types of businesses, and asking the province to hold off on further increasing minimum wage until things improve. But Jedlinski won't be waiting it out. Are you hoping to be able to reopen a bakery down the road?
No, never. This really was like an incredible experience. I really have such a love for small businesses, and I want them to do well. I think COVID was one fight, but I think this is like the real one right now, to see like who can actually like come out of this in one piece.
An audit of the Canadian government's pandemic spending shows its rollout of vaccines and financial benefits was swift but wasteful. The federal auditor general responsible for keeping tabs on government spending released her fall audits in Ottawa. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
Canada did not have.
The Auditor General says the federal government's COVID-19 benefit programs rolled out fast, and without them, Canada's poverty rate would have doubled.
We found overall that they were quite effective in meeting the government's objectives of first getting support out to individuals and employers quickly, minimizing the increase in poverty or income inequalities, and also helping the economy bounce back from the pandemic.
But the audit found Ottawa gave out billions of dollars in CERB payments it shouldn't have. She's identified $4.6 billion in overpayments. Only half of that money has been repaid so far. And she's flagged an extra $27.4 billion in pandemic relief that needs to be investigated. Half of that money could have gone to businesses that didn't qualify. She says in its rush to hand out checks quickly, the government limited its checks on applicants.
And that's why the hard work is now needed when you minimize prepayment to do rigorous post-payment work to identify who is really ineligible.
But she says the government's efforts to find and recoup that money are not thorough or fast enough.
What is their plan on how they intend to deal with it, and how much are taxpayers going to be on the hook for the administrative costs to pursue these individuals?
A lot of Canadians have paid back these overpayments. A lot have negotiated repayment agreements. So we are trying to balance risk and fairness.
The Auditor General also found that Canada wasted millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses. As of this spring, 50 million surplus doses were earmarked for donation to other countries, but less than 1/3 were given away, and nearly 14 million expired before they could be.
The goal was to ensure that every Canadian who wanted to be vaccinated could have access to vaccines, and that was achieved.
Since Canada didn't have its own factories to make COVID-19 vaccines, the Auditor General says it was smart of the government to enter into agreements with several companies to purchase them before the shots were even manufactured. But doing that meant some doses would be wasted. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hospitals across Canada continue to feel the effects of the pandemic, and that's paired with respiratory infections in children raging across the country. Healthcare systems are struggling to keep up. Some have been forced to cancel services, while others are juggling resources. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson has this report.
It was a parent's nightmare. A 3-year-old with high fever that wouldn't come down, and one hospital after another too busy to treat him until they found a walk-in clinic that could.
Going around and just trying to find help, begging on doors. Like, I can't believe that in 2022 that's what we're doing.
A surge in kids' respiratory infections, especially the flu, continues to stretch resources at pediatric hospitals across the country, with admissions 10 times higher than usual.
12 children's hospitals are tracking data. In the last week of November, we saw 223 admissions to the hospital for children suffering from side effects of the flu. This number would typically be 10, 11, 12 kids a week.
The evidence of crisis is everywhere. Ottawa's Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario bringing in the Red Cross this week to support staff. In Calgary, a pediatric hospice discharging its respite patients because staff were urgently needed at the local children's hospital. Stories like those prompting anger and vague responses from the authorities.
We're going to make sure we're listening to the best advice from experts and public health authorities.
Help is coming. Our system is under strain. There's no doubt about that. And this is not just unique to, Albertans Children's Hospital.
We still have time to blunt the impact of this transmission by getting people vaccinated.
Experts say concrete solutions are needed now.
We have to, number one, increase capacity in our healthcare system so we can absorb these things when they happen. But we also have to try to prevent these things from happening in the first place.
Experts say the best thing Canadians can do to help protect their kids is to give them the flu shot, something only a small number of kids under the age of 4 have received. And while there seems to be no political will to bring back mandates, many experts recommend masking, especially when in crowded indoor spaces. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's NDP is welcoming a new leader. In the end, the race for the party's top job wasn't really much of a race at all.
The real race is the race to defeat Doug Ford in 2026. The real race is to push this government to repeal their legislation to pave over the green belt. The real race is to try to stop their creeping privatization of healthcare and education and to build better schools and stronger communities. That's the race.
Marit Stiles was the only person to vie for the role of party leader. The New Democrats will now hold a confirmation vote. As long as a majority of party members are in favor, she will secure the job and become leader of the official opposition in the legislature. Stiles previously served as a school trustee, the party's education critic, and president of the federal New Democratic Party. The new mayor of Essex is pumping the brakes on a project she pitched to restore Harrow District High School. The town bought the property last year. Last night, council heard it could cost up to $10 million to restore. Mayor Sherry Bondy has looked at this as a community hub. A consultant says that would require millions of dollars in work to get mechanical, architectural, and electrical work up to code. The building has been vacant since 2016. Council was told it would need a new heating system and a complete replacement of the roof. Bondy said that restoring the high school, quote, should not be attacked right now, adding that they should be aware of core infrastructure like roads. She said the building isn't a total loss, but added there likely won't be any capital dollars spent on the building this year or in 2023. A developing story now. The company headed by Donald Trump has been found guilty of tax fraud. A jury in New York convicted 2 corporate entities of the Trump Organization of helping executives dodge taxes on lavish perks such as Manhattan apartments and luxury cars. The company was convicted on all 17 counts it faced, including conspiracy charges and falsifying business records. The verdicts are seen as a significant repudiation of financial practices at the former U.S. president's business. Trump himself was not on trial. The company faces fines of up to $1.6 million. Trump Organization lawyers say they will appeal. A live look outside there. We do have a chance of drizzle going into this evening with another overcast day expected tomorrow. Colette Kennedy will be here right after the break with your full weather forecast. Stay with us. Today marks the 33rd anniversary of the mass shooting at École Polytechnique in Montreal. On this day in 1989, a gunman, motivated by a hatred of feminists, walked into the engineering school and murdered 14 female students. 13 other people were wounded. A wreath ceremony was held to remember the victims. And flags are flying half-mast at the school. Another ceremony took place at dusk, the time the first shots were fired, featuring 14 beams of light, one for every woman who lost her life. The anniversary was declared the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women in 1991. Today in Montreal, the United Nations COP15 summit kicked off. Leaders and experts from nearly 200 countries are taking part in the summit, which is aimed at protecting and preserving the world's biodiversity. The Prime Minister addressed the event on its first day.
Nature is a part of who we are. And we're here today at COP15 to make sure it remains part of who we will be for generations to come.
Justin Trudeau's opening remarks were interrupted briefly by protesters. Delegates at the summit are looking to reach a global agreement on saving the world's ecosystems and the plants and animals that depend on them. Among the issues on the agenda are the spread of invasive species and a call to reduce the use of pesticides and plastics. And it is time now for a look at our weather forecast. For that, we've got Colette Kennedy with us. Colette, another really gloomy day out there today.
I know, it's hard when you have those overcast conditions, right? Kind of like sometimes you got to just pep yourself up with things. And I mean, the temperatures hopefully help a little bit because it is so mild. This time of year, a normal high 3 and a normal low around -4. And you can see, I mean, how significantly high we are above the game on the temperatures, including these overnight lows. And not a big difference between the two, right? We change a couple degrees, and that's kind of it between night and day. And as we go into tomorrow, still looking at some mild air in place. I'm showing you something. This is actually, these are the current temperatures, but this is what I laid down yesterday when we looked at this. So where the cold air was and where the cold was sort of meeting the warm, and we got that stationary front. But just look at how minor the change has been. They're kind of pushing back and forth. I'll just move it there. There's where we are now. This comes back up a little bit, so there's been a pushback of the mild air. It hasn't moderated these temperatures in the prairies very much, though, has it? And just not seeing that front able to make its way through, and that's why any precipitation has tended to be light. Well, draped along that front, there's some more significant rain that's kind of working its way across Lake Michigan, or the state of Michigan, and towards Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, but we'll get tagged by some of this through the overnight, well, even this evening and overnight to tomorrow morning. The current temperatures all around, you see how mild they are, the coolest being Goderich at 3 degrees, the winds being light, so then we get some patchy fog developing because we're not getting the mixing. There's that line of not just showers, but even a little bit of light, wet snow there. And so as we work our way through the overnight, it works its way through in the form of some rainfall. Early tomorrow, we see that moving away. Later tomorrow, maybe getting some sunny breaks developing. I say maybe because we have a much better chance of getting some sun and vitamin D coming back into Thursday, as things will break up, some morning cloud, and then we should carve some of this out, becoming variable through the day, but more sun, which will feel good once we get to that. Let's move that fog over. There you go, 4 or 5 degrees for the overnight lows, incredible, closer to daytime highs. 6 degrees for tomorrow, 6 or 7 really, and then finding temperature just kind of has a little bit of a decline as we go into Thursday. It's very, very gentle. There will be some cooler nights, but even those aren't so bad. There's going to be more of an adjustment to the north of us, but for southwestern Ontario, yes, not as mild, but it's not too big a deal. It's not that extreme. A few wet flurries possible into the weekend, though.
Sounds good. And tomorrow, holding out for those sunny breaks.
Yeah,
I need
hope.
those sunny breaks. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, how to preserve family treasures. That's coming right up. The Assembly of First Nations has named the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Murray Sinclair, as a mediator to help the AFN with conflict resolution. 5 months ago, National Chief Roseanne Archibald was temporarily suspended, then reinstated by the group's executive committee. But in her opening remarks at a special assembly today, Archibald tried to present a united front with the executive.
We plan on having a productive and positive meeting, and we're determined to get the work done. Welcome to the 2022 Special Chiefs Assembly.
Archibald has been accused of workplace bullying. She has in turn accused the Assembly CEO of colluding with the complainants to undermine her authority. An investigation into the charges against Archibald is ongoing. The AFN is holding a special 3-day meeting in Ottawa. Let's end tonight with a look at family treasures, the kind of stuff that might be buried in a basement or the back of a garage. Those items may not be valuable, but they are heirlooms people want to preserve. The CBC's Zach Gowdy asked some experts to share their best tips to keep them in good condition.
When you're lifting something up, you'll want to pick from the base. For example, with this one, this handle has been repaired, and the glue or the adhesive might have become deteriorated over time, and this handle might be really weak.
If you have a photograph that you really love, and maybe you have it framed on your wall at home, instead of framing the original, you should take it down, have it scanned, and print out a copy. Then you can put the original away and you know it's safe, and you can still enjoy your image. So another thing that a lot of people have are these, they're called magnetic photo albums. People commonly have a lot of questions about them because the photos do get stuck to the page, and then there's a question of, well, what do I do next? So what we really recommend is that if you have one of these albums, the very first thing you're going to want to do is scan each page of the album before you try and remove the photos. There's also some valuable information in knowing how the objects were displayed by the person who first had them, and maybe it tells a story or it progresses chronologically. So that's another layer of historical information.
So it's not high tech and it's not fancy, but it's essentially a plastic tub. Pick your most treasured memorabilia or drawings that your child drew for you. And every layer, every enclosure that you put them in is another layer of protection. So you have your drawing, and you have your folder, and you have it in the tub. So if there was a flood, it will stay dry.
You want to keep your treasures in as good condition as you can for as long as you can, so you can pass it down to family and they can all experience the same story that might be tied to it that you have as well.
The photos were the big one for me, and I'm just picturing all of the family albums in my family home, and I think, oh my gosh, we have a lot of work to do. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can find all of our information for Sounds of the Season there as well, how to donate and support our local food banks. And you can also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.